sure you check out guitarmerch.com. We've got loads of cool guitar, music, and everyone loves guitar t-shirts, hoodies, and mugs, and everything comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to you. Head on over to guitarmerch.com. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We're going to show some love to the rhythm section today. We got Kaveh Rastegar on the show with us. He's a bass player, really unique in what he does, and he's taken his musical career way beyond the convention. I want to just give a shout out and a thank you to our mutual friend, the wonderful, lovely Bob Glaub, for hooking us up. Bob, thanks very much. I just saw Bob in downtown, and they played, Jackson Browne was here, so it was a great show. It was nice to see these guys all playing.
That's great. Yeah, he's the best.
Oh my God, he's like a Swiss watch, man. He doesn't. His timing is rock solid there.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about Kaveh. He's a Grammy-nominated songwriter, record producer, composer, and bassist. He's a founding member of Grammy-nominated group Kneebody, and for many years he's also been John Legend's touring bassist. He's recorded with artists including Bruce Springsteen, Ringo Starr, Shania Twain, Beck, and Jeff Babko, as well as on hundreds of sessions and in films such as Daddy's Home, The Big Sick, and Walk Hard. He also served as music director with Sia, appearing with her on Saturday Night Live. Now, this is where things get really diverse and cool. As a songwriter, he's written or co-written with artists including Bruno Mars, De La Soul, Ciara, Cee-Lo Green, Meshell Ndegeocello, and Kimbra. He's also written, produced, and released 2 of his own albums as an artist, and this year in 2020 rather, he played bass alongside Sting in his musical The Last Ship. He co-wrote the Grammy-nominated single Collide, which is a record by Tiana Major 9. Is that the way they say it? Just Tiana Major 9?
Yeah.
Okay. And Tiana Major 9 and Earth Gang for the film Queen and Slim. I checked out the record. It's a very good record. You can see why it was Grammy nominated. He's also co-written with artist Sabrina Claudio on a number of her projects, including Christmas Blues, which includes features from The Weeknd and Alicia Keys. My daughter just saw The Weeknd a while ago. And he is currently collaborating with London singer, songwriter, and actress Cynthia Erivo on her upcoming album. She's got her hands in everything, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's an Olympian. She's
force of nature.
She does everything. Exactly.
Yeah, I read about her. Man, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Craig, for having me and for having such an incredible show. I'm just digging into the wonderful treasure trove of interviews that you accumulated. So it's a pleasure.
Thanks, man. Thanks. That's really kind of you. All right. So you're originally from Canada. You grew up in Denver. How old were you when you moved to the States, and what prompted that?
Well, yeah, I was born in Montreal by happenstance. So my parents, they let's just say they just kind of made they ended up in in Montreal. And my dad's from Iran. He's an immigrant. He moved to the States in the very early 70s, late 60s, maybe like 69, 70. And he was very much a part of his generation, like the free spirit, countercultural, hippie, whatever you want to call it, world.
From Iran, really?
From Iran,
and as a hippie. Now, I didn't think that would have, like, we're so ethnocentric here, and I give him credit because that was not a good time to be from Iran coming to this country,
Well, I mean, historically, like, that particular time was relations were completely different than they became 10 years later. 10 years later is when the revolution happened. So he was kind of still, he came out when the Shah was still very much in power, and he was kind of like a lot of, like one of the big, the great American exports is our culture. So he was a huge fan of film. Westerns and just all the classic films, like all the films that were coming out. And he volunteered at a theater in Tehran. He was just part of, some of our biggest exports were, film, TV, culture, and music. And he was definitely a consumer of all of that, and just really interested in in all the changes that were happening in the world. And yeah, he ended up meeting my mom, and it was totally, everything was random, and because they both worked at a gas station together.
In
And,
here in the States, in
yeah,
Canada.
and no, in Denver. He
That's
found his way out there. He got on a plane. He got onto a military plane. He made his way out to made his way out to, I think, Santa Monica, and then I think he knew somebody who knew somebody in Littleton, Colorado, and he hitchhiked all the way out there, and ended up, getting a job at a gas station. I think my mom was just, was just very young. She was also working at the gas station. They hit it off, and then he found himself in Canada maybe a few years later. I think she followed him out there, and that's where I was born. And then to come back into the States, they came back into the States, I think just to raise the kid in the States, and then that's how that happened. And
That's wow. What? So
yeah,
you
yeah.
that's like so free spirited, man.
Oh yeah, very, very, very free spirited. That's a good way of describing my parents.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But they yeah, so I was in Canada probably till I was like 3 years old, 2.5, 3, something like that.
And they
And
basically moved. They thought for some reason your dad figured you'd have a better life here than in Canada.
yeah, or dad or mom. I'm not sure exactly how that decision was made, but well, I know that he left the country because he wasn't. I think he probably always had designs to get back into the States, because I think he left the country because he was here on a student visa, and he wasn't studying at the time, and then he kind of left, and he came back, and
Right.
came back under as a married man, and could become a citizen that way, and
Got totally get it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Good for him, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Are they still around?
yeah, my parents are still around. They split up when I was young, but
Oh,
they were
sorry,
always
man.
really. Oh yeah, no, it was they were always really great parents. Really, they were always great kind of collaborators. Like they lived pretty close to each other. I have to hand it to both of them. My mom was really young. She was I think just turned 21 when I was born, and my dad was young too. And they especially my dad too, just kind of being from a different country, like having no resources, like having most of his resources in another country, just kind of sticking around and like being a present father, was incredible,
Yeah,
just, especially, in hindsight. So yeah, they're still very much with us. And my mom is still in Denver, and my dad is actually out here in Los Angeles.
oh,
He's
that's
a
cool.
chef. He's a chef, and he's still working. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's cool, man. What a good story that is.
yeah, yeah.
And you probably you have kids. You're
Mhm.
able to, because like raising kids is not an easy thing, man. It's like real easy to say, well, I had to leave. It sounds like you really appreciate that your dad, was a dad,
Oh
which is
yeah,
cool. Yeah,
totally, totally,
that's
yeah.
good, man.
And yeah, you're right. And the second you have kids, you just kind of see everything. You see everything through that lens, and you realize that, you just see life differently, and that's been a fun, kind of a fun road to go on.
Well, how old are yours?
I have two daughters. They're 9 and 11.
All
Yeah.
right. That
So
fun may change a little bit in coming.
aware of that. That's what people keep telling me, and I get it. I understand. I keep talking about a good friend of mine who's a great drummer. You should talk to if you haven't already. Michael Urbano,
Okay.
killing,
I don't know.
amazing drummer who's worked with everybody. We worked together for years, and he's got two daughters that are now, I think they're in like their early. They're both in their early 20s now, and he talked about how everybody would say what you just said about watch out for adolescence, man, watch out for those teenage years and all that stuff. And he was like, if I can quote him, I don't, I don't want to, but I don't, yeah, like, so his whole thing was just like, when they were babies, like that was one thing, like I just didn't feel, like I don't know exactly what he was saying. He's just like, something about like that those really young years, he didn't quite have a handle on as much as is like right when they hit adolescence and teenage years. He's just like, I get this, I remember this, I'm about it, you know. And I've taken that with, you know, like that made it, you know, because you know that really kind of bucked the trend of like watch out for these crazy kids, because the writing is on the wall. Like my 11-year-old is going on, you know, whatever they say, like they're all of the tells are there, you know.
Yeah,
like,
man.
like the bedroom door is closed, you know.
That's
you know, like all that stuff. And I remember the other night I was just like, yeah, you know, I like to play chess, you know, with them, you know. And then I was just like, you want to play a game of chess? They're like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. And I was like, yeah, okay, that doesn't stink.
No, but it's painful. It was for me. It was started at 11 too with her. I remember we were cuddling one night, reading a book in bed.
Mm-hmm.
Literally the next day, I walk in a room and she just looks at me. She goes, "Didn't you see that door closed? You need to knock."
Oh.
I was devastated. I was like devastated and really angry at the same time, because I was like, who the hell are you talking to? You know, inside my head, but I couldn't process it. I had to go talk to my wife because I didn't have any sisters or anything.
Yeah, I mean, like parenthood is sad in general.
Oh,
it's like all just pictures of my kids like from like 6 months ago. It just makes me sad. It just depends on the type of person I think you are. Like I can tend to be melancholic, you know, sometimes, and it's just like, oh man, I just see pictures of them like 6 months ago and it's like, damn, it's so, you know, it can kind of get you, but at the same time you know, man, it's been incredible. It's been wonderful. Yeah. I
would love to talk to you in like 5 years. It's been wonderful. My daughter said to me last night, she said,
you're 2 for 2. You're 2 for 2 with the
dude, she said to me last night, she says, Dad, I think you had bad karma. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, you had a rough childhood and then you had to deal with me. Like, she's totally normal now, but she, like that 11 to like 19 was just like insanity. So
wow.
Anyway, I hope you're spared that, and it all worked out, but it was a rough spell. So
I'm glad you're good. And
no, everything's good. And my sons, they're all great, but they were really all difficult. I don't know why. And we were just like, we didn't even have, because we don't have family here, we didn't even have a drink as like you know, we were so like boring and vanilla. We just had time to parent. That was it, you know.
Right.
I don't know. Right. Anyway.
Yeah.
God bless you, my son. Okay, so did you grow up in Denver then?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. That's you know, I've now been in Los Angeles longer than I've lived anywhere, but I definitely claim Denver's my hometown. I definitely loved growing up there.
What made you move to LA? Was that musically related or?
Yeah, totally. It was totally related to music. I tell the story a little bit. You know, I just really found my tribe, you know, as whatever that cliche is. I at a certain point when actually I can pin it down to a specific time, but
what was that?
Well, you know, it was when I was 15. It was I met some musicians that you know, that just became peers of mine, that you know, we became the best of friends. It's not unlike a lot of people's stories of like, you know, falling into like a group of people that you just end up like spending, you know, the next 10 years, and if you're lucky, the rest of your life together, like knowing each other, working together and all that other stuff. And it just so happened that these people were like some of the best musicians I had ever, you know, kind of been around. And we were all around the same age. And there was just a real, like, you know, just kind of getting into it. Like I started playing music, like music was always in the house, like with the parents who were just into it. Like I was really lucky about, you know, with that, like the, you know, the records that were playing in the house were like, you know, my dad was just so into, you know, like Muddy Waters and Little Walter and James Cotton and Freddie King, and then also like Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and Taj Mahal and the Stones and the Jethro Tull, the Beatles, all that other, you know, and then stuff coming out at the time like would be like, you know, Tom Petty and you know, like just great music. And my mom too, like was really into a lot of, the music coming out. And she got into a relationship with a guy that I call my stepdad. Like he was in my life, in that role for about 9 years till I was, I think, like 14. And we still have a great relationship now. He's an incredible musician, great guitar player and or a composer. And in the Denver music community, and he had this project called Thinking Plague, and they've been together forever, and they've got a lot of devoted fans kind of all over the world, like small pockets of people who really love that music. The music's pretty incredible. And so, I was just around a lot of music, and he was just listening to, like, he was a guitar player in the era of, like, just the big revolution in music, like he's his name's Mike Johnson. And so, like, like he was hearing Keith Richards experimenting with, like distortion, getting into, listening to the Beatles, listening to Hendrix, Jeff Beck, and then all of a sudden, John McLaughlin comes, and then that takes you into prog, and he loved Yes, and he loved all that stuff. And then he got into, like the kind of Art Bears and Fred Frith and Henry Cow and all that, like, kind of, that kind of music. And so, so I grew up in the 80s in Denver, and he was, buying records by, like, Kate Bush and the Police and Peter Gabriel, and all that other stuff was always playing in the house. And so music was all around, and I started playing saxophone in the school band, which is really funny, because the school band, you get that chance in, like 4th, 5th grade, to pick an instrument. And I remember my dad, it's kind of an uncommon thing for an Iranian dad to say, but he said, like, I want you to be a jazz musician, which is really funny because it tends to be that Persian parents, I mean, all parents, they want the best for their kids, and a lot of immigrant parents, like, they want you to do better than they did.
Education is the driver, not creative.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's a shortcut to that. Exactly. Like,
totally.
And like, in all of those countries, in Iran and India, like, math and science are, like, off the charts compared to what they are out here. And so it's like, you're kind of, expected to, or, like, like, usually, I
think that's a proper word, expected, because the expectations of immigrant parents are much higher than expectations of American parents. I can tell you right now, because I went to school with tons of first generation, or not, either they were born in other countries or first generation here. And they are.
Yeah, because, like, you have catching up to do, and you have to kind of assimilate, and you have to create a better life than, all that other stuff. And so it's usually, like, engineer or doctor, like they there's a lot of those. And it's just funny that my dad's like, I want you to become a jazz musician, or kind of like, you need to play the saxophone, because, like, because he just loved jazz, and he loved, and he became a chef. And he's a working chef still to this day. And which, so I have to hand his, like, idiosyncratic, his take on life. Like, his take on life is just kind of like, you do what you love, and, and he values, like, art and music and all that other stuff, which is also, it's also, the Persian culture has, like, a really rich
history of that.
So anyway, so the key was kind of pushing towards that, and I picked up the saxophone. I played
alto, tenor.
I played alto first, and I was pretty good, and pretty good for a 10-year-old, 9-year-old, and I kept playing saxophone. I had a little stint in 6th grade playing the baritone saxophone jazz band. I was playing alto and baritone, and I played sax in school band, and I was all right. I was pretty good. But I really started getting into music on my own terms, and I think everybody can relate to that, where it's like, it isn't, it's all of a sudden, like, I was seeking out music. I was seeking out with spare money that I had, I would try to get to a record store. I would try to get somewhere to get music that I was really into. And I was right around the time I was 11, and I was really into, I guess it was punk rock music, like American punk rock music, or British, I mean, just like the Sex Pistols,
Yeah.
the Clash, all of the bands, like, the Black Flag, Minor Threat, Dead Kennedys, all that stuff, like
Hmm.
Suicidal Tendencies, Bad Brains, all of those bands where, um I was also really into skateboarding, which is the thing, like that was a subculture I completely embraced. It was just all about, it was like the height of that craze, which would be the late 80s, like I think it was like the second coming of that craze, because like the big craze was in the 70s, and then it died out for a bit, and then it just exploded again
Yeah.
around 87, probably in the wake of the Back to the Future movie, and all of a sudden that culture exploded, and I was there for it. And the music, the culture, I was into that, and I was also really into reggae music and all that stuff. So like the bass is just such a big part of all that stuff, and
Totally.
especially in punk music, where it's just like the band's just like driving along, and all of a sudden it stops, and you just hear this like ominous like riff, happening. Like on the first Suicidal Tendencies record, you just hear this. The bass lines are just incredible, and so I started. There was an old acoustic guitar sitting around the house at my dad's house, and I remember picking it up, and The Cure had a record called Disintegration that came out in '89, and there's the song Fascination Street on that record, and Simon Gallup is a player on that record, and he plays, this bass line for Fascination Street is just, it's the best thing ever. It's just this like growly kind of great bass line. And I remember learning that on the E string of the acoustic guitar, just kind of picking it out by ear, and just feeling so liberated that I was able to figure that out, and I think that probably most of the people listening, and like everybody can relate to that feeling of just like, holy shit, like I didn't know this song last night, and now I can do it,
Right.
and I just kind of was grinding away on this acoustic guitar until I snapped that string, and I snapped the A string, and then my mom saw I really was, I was going for it, and she bought a bass for me for my birthday, from a kid, because she ended up becoming a secretary at the high school I went to.
Okay.
So this kid, Derek Severe, he had a 70s Fender Music Master bass, like one of
Okay.
those, like the student bass with the
Mhm.
lipstick pickup, and she bought it from him for like $40, and that was my first, and I was just off and running, and I just kind of was off the rails, just learning everything, from records and stuff, and then there were two kids in high school, so I must have been in ninth grade then. There's two kids that were 2 grades older than me that were the great guitar players in the school.
Right.
This is all getting to a point, I promise. Um, these guys were really great. They took me under their wing. They just showed me anything. It was like, that was, to me, it was my first big break, getting to play
Right.
with kids. And they were really into the blues. They were really into, Stevie Ray Vaughan was still alive then, so they were into Stevie. They were into Clapton, Hendrix, all of that stuff, which I loved that stuff too. And just to get to like skip lunch and go and meet them in the band room and play like 12-bar blues with them, or to
Right.
Crossroads with them, and to get to just be around them was like the coolest thing ever. And just to kind of be picked to be around them. And in a lot of ways, like music became that subculture that skateboarding was, like, where it's like you have this kind of language that you're speaking. You have the trade magazine, you have the fashion, the everything about it that's a part of skateboarding. That's what music became for me. Like the same drive to like learn a trick. You would just be working
Right.
on a trick forever. Like I remember learning all of Texas Flood and then going over to this kid's house, my mom taking me over there and going over, and then he was just like, you did your homework. And
Yeah.
and having that kind of that same reward feeling that happened with being able to land a trick or something. And so these guys, they were a couple grades ahead of me, and they ended up going off to college. And I remember being like, now what the hell am I going to do? Which I think is something that a lot of people run up against too, with young musicians, older musicians, however it is. It's like you have promise with this like core group of people that you're working with, and for whatever reasons, like one of them goes to college, one of them gets married, whatever it is, all of a sudden like the band ends, or it's like and then how do you pick up from there? How do you find that relationship again? And for me, that was the beginning of my junior year of high school. Or the summer before that, I remember going with some good friends of mine down, like now those two guys, there's Mike Prasad and Mark Abrams that already got off to college. And so it was the summer before my 11th grade, and I went to this this concert downtown in Denver to hear a bunch of local bands with my friends. And we heard all these bands, and like all the people who were playing might have been in their like mid 20s to late 20s, but to us they seemed ancient, like,
Right.
and and they're playing their music, and it was fine. It was great. It was like a free concert out on this hill downtown Denver. And all of a sudden, I tell the story all the time, all of a sudden, like I see these guys like come up, and they're doing their line check, and they're all kind of like scruffy, shirtless, hippie kids. Like they all look really funny. Like they just seem like people I'd like to like. They reminded me of friends of mine,
Right.
right around the same age, maybe a little bit older than me. But and all of a sudden, you hear the drummer like do a quick line check and everything, and it's like all of a sudden like shit, these guys are really good. They're really good. And then they played, and it was like, oh my god, they're great, this band. And they were called the Psychedelic Zombies. And I remember just being blown away. My friends and I, from high school, we were just blown away by these guys. And so like a week later, I was at a show. I was at a Primus show in Denver in front of the Gothic Theater, and I was standing in line, and there's this kid in line. I was about to go into this concert. There's this kid in line like right behind me, and he's got a Psychedelic Zombies t-shirt on. And I was just like, hey man, like that band, they're great. Like I love that band. Like they're really good. I just seen them a week before. And he was like, yeah, the guitar player is my brother. I was like, oh wow, okay. And then I went inside, and I saw like, oh, there's the singer, and there's it's like everybody's Primus in town. They're gonna go see Primus. Like they're all there. And so I walked up to the singer, and I was like, hey man, I'm a bass player. I was 15. Like I would take the bus to gigs, or my mom would drive me, or I like I couldn't drive. I'm a bass player. I'm looking for a guitar player. Do you know a guitar player? And this guy's like, he ends up handing me his number for whatever reason, and we become best friends. Like we just this friendship starts off with him, and then I meet his guitar player, who becomes one of my best friends. Like that guitar player, he and I were nominated for that Grammy last year. Like his name is Josh Lopez, like an incredible guitar player.
Wow. So you've known him that 30
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, we've known each other 31 years now.
That's
And
awesome, man.
and yeah, I mean, so that was a
Wow. That's
long
a
story. You feel free to skip through that if you wanted to.
no, that's cool, man.
But for me, it was that literally like that afternoon was exactly where my life changed. And I can trace every single, like all those credits that you named, like at the beginning of all the stuff I've done and everything. I could trace every single one of those, like without a doubt, every single one of those things down to that afternoon.
That's so freaky, man. That
And
is.
and so and then so all of those guys ended up making their way to LA. So that was a long way of saying like Yeah,
That's
LA.
how you. That's where it
Yeah,
came from.
that was just the natural progression. It's just, they made their way to LA, and
Outside of Josh, did any of them have like a career or?
yeah, very much so. Yeah, like the drummer, Darren Hahn. I mean, so Darren and I, we used to, I mean, we were all in bands together, like instantly, like, you know, we were all in bands together. Like I was, they were an incredible band. They were just kind of like they were kind of like, it was the height of the whole alternative thing, but they were kind of like a horn band, kind of like Tower of Power.
Okay.
They're Tower of Power meets Fishbone meets, like it was just this kind of like, but they could all play great.
Yeah.
So they were, like bands like No Doubt would come and open for them, like when No Doubt was just running in a
Oh
van,
wow.
or like when Fishbone would come to town, the Zombies would tour and open for them on little regional tours. And so my best friend at the time and I, Scott Seaver, Scott now plays with Tenacious D. He's the drummer for Tenacious D. But
Okay.
Scott and I were the techs for those shows
For the psychedelic zombies.
Yeah, just so we could be around Fishbone. And we were
Yeah.
16 years old, like just sitting over the theater, like watching Fish play drums and watching, John Bigham play guitar, who had played with Miles Davis. And we're just like, oh, fuck, like, look at those guys.
That's
And
cool.
so, and they were like, the Zombies were like a huge band. Like they were, packing clubs, and, we were kind of a part of that thing. Like, so I was in all of their like offshoot bands. Like they all had like, side projects, and I was the bass player for all that stuff. And then all of the horn players in that band ended up, starting like jazz groups or acid jazz groups or hip hop groups. And I was always the bass player for that stuff. But yeah, they all went on to do stuff. Like the keyboard player is this guy, Keith Chauncia, Keithis. And he's done tons of things with T-Bone Burnett, like tons of records, produces. He lives in France now, but he did the Killing Eve soundtrack. He does that.
Okay.
But he's worked on tons of records. We've worked on tons of things together over the years. And Josh and I mean, Josh has worked on tons of things. Josh co-wrote the song American Boy with Estelle, and, Kanye West. And he and I ended up working with Bruno Mars on Bruno's first record. And Darren, the drummer, ended up playing in this band Gegita, which is a great band. And they toured all over the place. And that was a band with Tommy Jordan and Greg Kurstin. Greg is the biggest producer in music now, like produced the last Paul McCartney record, the last Adele record, all that stuff. And so it's like all of those guys ended up doing amazing things. And it was just it was this amazing time to be in Denver, because Denver was this like fertile city for music. It's like you could be 15 and you could go play at clubs. And especially if you grew up there and like your uncle was always at that bar, like, like people would look out for you, and you could kind of like, you could really do things. And you could go and hear music. You could hear incredible musicians too, living in Denver too. Like it was just a very fertile, like just, there were people like
Mike Miller, I think, was from Denver. Do you know Mike, guitar player?
I don't.
Yeah, he plays Boz Scaggs, and he's phenomenal. One of the best guitar players I've ever met. But he had I've had many people from Denver here, and they all have very similar stories about the richness of the Denver music scene.
Yeah. Did you know Kenny Vaughn? Did you know Kenny?
Yeah, Kenny Vaughn. Right. He was from. Yeah, I had Kenny on my show a long time ago. Hey, no, it's weird. This is before we had video. His show is still one of the most popular.
He went to high school with my mom. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, he's older. Yeah. That's pretty wild. Yeah, he was from a lot. And then, of course, a lot of guys played with Tommy Bolin.
Right. Yeah.
Zephyr. There. Yeah. Do you know Jimmy Haslip?
I do know. Well, I know Jimmy just from being, in the bass community. Yeah. Like, was he from Denver?
No, he's from the Bronx, like I am. But but oddly enough, he got out. He was in Tommy Bolin's band.
Oh no shit.
And did a stint with them, and he passed right shortly after Jimmy started working with him. In fact, I think he was one of the pallbearers at the wedding.
Oh
at
man.
wedding, excuse me, at the funeral.
Funeral.
You know,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
don't quote me on it, but I'm if my memory serves me correct, he was one of the
Oh wow.
pallbearers. Yeah,
Yeah. I've got a copy of that Zephyr album downstairs actually. Like
that
the
Zephyr album's great. That's
Candy,
that for
Candy.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard that a lot about Denver. So you come out to LA, and how did you? I wanted to talk about your production and stuff, but how did you first get started? You come out here. What was your? I mean, so you had some guys, but you're all sort of at the same level.
Yeah. It was my route was really circuitous, like people always ask about like successes and everything and like or like when did you make it, that whole thing, like that's a question that gets asked a lot. And I always had blinders in the sense that I kind of always felt like I made it, like from the second that I got to play with those kids in high school. It was just real nice.
That's no,
I'm
man, that's really good. That probably served you so well because it
so
took
well.
you didn't have any pressure on you.
Yeah, I didn't I
That's
I had that thing where it was just kind of like it was all gravy. Like every like I've like a crazy, like there's always been like a crazy kind of drive to work and get better and to get into interesting new situations, but at the same time it was kind of like, like this kind of stupefied feeling of like, what, are you kidding me? I get to do this, you know so that always really served me. And I yeah, I kind of I ended up, just playing in tons of bands in Denver. And I graduated high school a year early, so I was just kind of playing and gigging and doing a little regional tours in high school and just out of high school, and playing in tons of bands and making my rent playing music. And getting to do, like, being, feeling like a bigger fish in a small pond, in that, like, 18 years old, getting to play at Red Rocks on the Reggae on the Rocks show. And I was in a reggae band. You could make a great living like playing all the ski towns and doing all
yeah.
that. And then playing in like original projects. And my whole thing was like, I eventually met a great trumpet player who was my age, named Shane Inslee.
Mm.
And we right at the same age when we were 18. And I heard him, I was like, God, this guy is amazing. He's just incredible, like just versatile, just incredible trumpet player. And we were on a gig the week later. I would do this Thursday night, like funk acid jazz gig up in Boulder. And he showed up because he was going to school. I wasn't going to school at the time. And we hit it off. We became really close friends. And we started a band together. And then we just started playing a lot in Denver. And a lot of promoter friends ended up getting us to open for like the Roots, or
Oh
like
wow.
Charlie Hunter Trio when they would come to town, or Medeski, Martin, and Wood would
I
come to
had
town.
Charlie on the show. He's pretty amazing
I love,
guy.
I love.
He's kind of like, where's your third hand, man?
Oh man, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I remember when that first record came out. That was huge. Like when they first got signed to Blue Note. And so we had this band together, Shane and I, and then Shane ended up transferring to Eastman School of Music in Rochester. And that was right
Sorry.
at the time I started. I finally went back to school. I started college. So I started
You
college.
went to Eastman School in Rochester?
Yeah, well, I started in northern Colorado in Greeley, because I was like, now 2 years had gone by and I hadn't gone to college. And I was like, if I don't go to college this year, I'm never going to go, because I'm already kind of making music and doing stuff. And so I quit every band I was in, and I just went to college, because there was just so many holes I needed to fill and fix and figure out.
Musically, you mean?
Oh yeah, like I didn't play at that time. I was just self-taught. I hadn't had one lesson. I was just playing bass, from being around people and by ear. And I couldn't spell a chord, I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
I could play well, and I had a really good sound, and I had some chops. I had this thing, but it's like I couldn't read. I couldn't. and I didn't play upright bass at the time, and that was something I always really wanted to do. And so I went to the state school, University of Northern Colorado. I quit all the bands I was in, and they didn't accept electric bass players there, and because that wasn't a real instrument or whatever, like that wasn't a major.
Yeah, that was stuff like that back then.
So,
Yeah.
so I went there as a singer in the Glee Club, and um, and that was awesome, getting to sing with this great choir, getting to sing Fauré's Requiem and like Salve Regina and whatever else, and just to hear the harmony and the voices moving together. And then all I did is I just practiced. I studied double bass with Jim Vaughn, who's the teacher there, and started with the French bow, and my hands are massive, so I moved.
Yeah, I noticed that when you were doing the microphone, I was like, holy shit, no wonder why this guy is so good. I'm like, whoa, God.
And
are you tall? Are you tall? Are you big? Like,
yeah, I'm 6'5", 6'6", like just
holy shit, yeah. Dude, you're like Tom Brady side. That's wow. That's you're a big guy, Jimmy. It's funny, musicians are either super tall or like super short for the most part. There's not like many middle ground. Jimmy Haslam's really big too, I think.
Well, I always really envied short bassists because it looks so cool, because they can just be like this, like just spread out, like with their hands, like,
oh, that's great. I've always envied short bass.
my kind of funny, like my funny but actually kind of true, like it'll probably happen someday, like my signature model bass that I really want to do is just some sort of bass that I can get so I can kind of look like Flea, or I can look like Mario from Bruno Mars band,
like 40 frets or something.
Yeah, or just like everything's just really, or it's just kind of like when you take a double bass and you put it on your lap and
right. That's so funny.
But
hold on one second. I want to ask you a couple of questions on something you said, because I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
You said, I felt like I made it just by playing with these guys.
Yeah, totally.
So there's like what I find interesting is you're obviously super driven.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. But somehow you hung your hat on that, which, like I said, to me, my perception of that is, oh my God, what a smart thing to do, because you already were like satiated. You were already satisfied, but it didn't change your work ethic, didn't change your ambition. How the hell did you, like, where did that come from? Because it's like, most people, and not just with career, with anything, with working out, anything, the bar, when you're driven, it's really hard to say, hey, I'm good where I'm at. And it probably has to do with living in the present, but the bar always gets higher.
Right.
It sounds like with you, your bar got higher, but your satisfaction about yourself didn't necessarily depend on that bar, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I mean, I could kind of psychoanalyze it it's
kind of very Zen. Yeah. I'm just like, oh, that's great. I need that shit.
Right. Well, I mean, I remember that there were people that were more practically minded than I was, that were incredible musicians. Like, I remember there's a guitar player that was just, back when we were, 16 or something, that could just play. He's just incredibly gifted and really, really great. And I just, there's just all different kinds of things that stop musicians from just getting out there and playing. And that to me is just so much of what really drove me, with just that feeling, that kind of charge of just getting to make something with somebody. I mean, and I talk about it sometimes, like, I think that I always really loved to draw, and that feeling of, and that kind of gets into my, like, the writing, the writing aspect of just being creative. But it's that idea of, like, you start out in the day with nothing, and then you have something at the end of the day. And that, I still have that feeling with writing music, or with getting to play with somebody. It's like, it's that same feeling of, like, so I guess what I was saying about like somebody who's like more practically minded, that they would just spend all their time practicing and they never felt good enough to get to play with somebody. I would just kind of like skip past all that stuff and learn as I was going. And that, you know, that can kind of ruffle some feathers, but I just didn't care. Like I
Oh, I
didn't
think that's
care.
wonderful because I'm that guy. Like, I'm not playing with anybody, no way. I'm not good enough,
Right. And a lot of people are, and a lot of really successful musicians I know are too, like where they're just like, I don't feel comfortable enough stepping into that role because I haven't put in the 10,000 hours yet.
Right.
So I'm going to put in the 10,000, and they do, and they eventually do that thing and they kill it, and I just
But there's
never been that person.
yeah, but I think that's one for whatever reason that you got there. I think that's a gift, man, to be honest with you, that you weren't preoccupied. Clearly you weren't preoccupied with what others think, but what's really impressive is you didn't judge yourself.
Right.
And that's where I know me, that's where I get caught up in with my own shit. I'm like, well, and whether it doesn't matter what, playing music or whatever, it's always like, I'm the worst critic. It sounds like you were able to somehow bypass that.
I mean, I definitely get into that. I get into that, and I have gotten into that, and there have been moments, lots of moments of those kind of feelings. And, but really what served me well was that kind of outlook. And it's also the fact it's my environment, because I saw the way that people could be successful. Like I saw like those friends, that band Zombies. It's like literally, it's like, that's what that they're doing it right now. So I'm going to do it too. If I hadn't seen that, maybe I wouldn't have had that kind of carefree outlook at it all. Because I mean, this is another thing. I mean, I just remember Keithis, the keyboard player, he ended up going to LA and really becoming the first satellite of all of ours. And he fell in with this group of musicians. This guy, Lonnie Marshall, heard him play. And Lonnie is like, from the time I met him back when I was 16 to now, he became a huge hero of mine. Like he's an incredible bass player. And at the time, he had just finished playing with Joe Strummer. After
Clash,
Joe, so he's the bass player on Joe's first record after the Clash broke up.
Oh, that's wild.
This album called Earthquake Weather, and it has Xander Schloss from the Circle Jerks and Jack Irons, who played in the Chili Peppers, and it's long.
Jack Irons is in a Pearl Jam for a minute too, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And so Keithis and Lonnie started a band together, and they were called Weapon of Choice. And Lonnie's younger brother Arik played in that band. So we would always get the cassette tapes of that band, like rehearsals from that band, from LA. And again, I was in my junior year of high school. And I remember later that year, John Frusciante in the Chili Peppers had quit the band, or he had gone his own way, and he went AWOL, and the guitar player that they got was Arik, which is Lonnie's little brother. So at that time, I knew, it's like, I knew the like that guy, and it was just kind of like, I can't discount the fact that I was in this group of people that were just doing music and making, and it was kind of like, if I didn't have that, and if I didn't see that, I don't think I would have, I can't give it all to me. Like, I just saw that it was like, oh yeah, this is something that you can do, and like, just keep doing it, and get to play with these people. And you can make music, you can make a life out of it. You can have a career, in it. There was a lot of that stuff kind of, played out. But then I ended up having a really circuitous route to doing a lot of the stuff I did, just because I kind of always have had that kind of like, I'm satisfied in the situations I'm in. Like, people I've played with them usually for at least 5 years, so it's like there's long, like I've got long track records with people, just because it's like, this is really fun. It's fun to get to do not one record, but 2, maybe 3 tours with somebody. And and then, build on that, and, you know, always like something with me is I would always just take way too much on, so yeah.
One thing I think too probably helped you out a lot is the carefree nature of your upbringing.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm like, there was never any demands. Is the acceptance? It seems like there was, you were accepted as you, and
Yeah.
then you were encouraged to be you, whatever that is. And I think that probably had a big thing to do with it too. So there was no pressure on you from within. Like you didn't have the immigrant thing, for lack of a better thing. We talked about, you didn't, hey man, dude, I need you to be a doctor. or my buddy's son down the street, he got a higher SATs. You got to get like that. Yeah, right. And by not having that, I bet that was a huge asset, for you. It's just like that you didn't even know about at that time. Like just the confidence level of you accepting you and being able to carry forward like that. That's really cool, man. That's
extremely lucky that way.
Yeah.
Extremely fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Just when you played with John Legend, who was his guitar player? Was it the
It was a couple of guitar players, and then he finally settled into someone.
Ryan Lerman? Was it him?
It was originally Ryan. Ryan was who brought me in.
Okay.
Ryan was his MD for
right,
and then
yeah,
and he brought me in because that song "All of Me" had really taken off at the end of a touring cycle. So they were like, all of a sudden, it's like, this is a huge song now, and they had just been on a tour with a like with the string quartet and guitar and piano. So like
right.
It wasn't like a big production. And Ryan was doing all of the arrangements.
I had him on the show here. He was.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I knew him, because I was like, I was just trying to think in my head. I've had too many people. I'm embarrassed. I have a really good memory, but I just can't remember 850 people, man. In 4 years, like as you were talking, I'm thinking of a punk band. I had a great bass player on. I'm like, I have no clue.
There's files.
I wouldn't even know where to look in my I forgot the name of the band. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, I remember, and he was doing like mad arranging. I do remember that.
Incredible arranging. Yeah, he's so talented.
Yeah,
and he was who brought me in. I'd never met him before, but he knew about me through our band Kneebody. And then I jumped in. I was working with Cia at the time,
right.
and jumped in, and 1 6-week tour turned into close to 7 years.
That's awesome. That's really cool, man. Good gig.
Yeah, totally.
I want to talk. How did you? Okay, so what's really curious to me is this diversity of functions for you across the musical spectrum, because people just don't do that, especially bass players. Not that like I'm singling out bass players, but you don't have a lot of bass players doing the amount of writing and collaborating with others the way you have. So you do sessions, you founded Kneebody, you have your own artist career going, but you've had tremendous success as a co-writer and producer with other artists. How did that evolve, as far as like, how do those opportunities come up?
Well, they're all unique opportunities. They're all different. And I had always kind of worked as a I always had Kneebody as the thing that I think everybody in that band felt like it was our thing, and we all felt like we had ownership of it, and we did have ownership of it. It was this thing where it was like, everything about the band, the sound, the level of the language, the way that we learned songs, the types of songs that we wrote, and there was just a strong kind of sense of identity with that band. But then another part of the band is like, we were all really keen on all of us just continue to develop as musicians outside of the band. So like, that was like a really cool thing. Like, we all had lots of other things going on while the band was going, and I just kind of took that to an extreme. You know, I would take on gigs. I was the bass player for a massive Italian singer for a long time, and
Who?
his name's Luciano Ligabue, and the kind of one of the biggest singers out there, incredible singer and incredible artist. And through that, I learned to speak Italian, became, you know, just had this crazy Italian adventure in the middle of doing Kneebody, in the middle of sessions, in the middle of, you know, starting to play with other artists. And um but I guess production was always something I was really into. And I think there's this thing, like moving to Los Angeles, you just see how the infrastructure works, and you just see you know, at first for me it was just like getting to play and just getting to, you know, be busy playing as a bass player. And then, you know, there would always be like cattle call auditions for gigs. I would do horribly on those.
Why?
You know,
Or why do you think anyway?
well, I know why. I mean, I think it boils down to like early on, like my early 20s, I would show up. My ears were always really good. I had just come from Eastman, and I worked really hard on, you know, developing my ear training to where it's like you could hear a piece of music and in the car and be able to kind of
Yeah.
play it from listening to it. And I would show up unprepared for all those auditions, like just straight up. I would show up like having listened to it like 2 or 3 times. And it was like this thing where I would kind of like psych myself out of, I would shortchange myself for the, you know, the opportunity that it was. Like I became, you know, over years of kind of failing through those kind of auditions and just not taking them seriously enough, because I was already busy enough in LA and I was doing lots of things. But I think I had a chip on my shoulder, and I also had this fear of failure where it's like, if I got called for this thing and I didn't get, and I worked really hard on it and I didn't get called for it, you know, like
So
what is it?
you like sabotaged yourself so you didn't have to. So like it,
I would kind of
of
sabotage,
course
like,
I can't get
I
that.
don't,
I didn't fucking prepare for it.
yeah, exactly.
That's pretty
I was,
funny, man.
you know, oh yeah, I'm full of
That's
lots of,
like that's like how to work, how to accommodate your dysfunctions or something like that.
oh yeah,
And I'm not
I'm
saying that in like in a judging way, because I've done stuff like that too, but it's just
great at that.
funny. Yeah. Isn't
I
it
mean,
weird how we are as people
you know,
sometimes?
yeah, and you know, like that's a big thing about moving to a city like LA. It's like you can be a bigger fish, and you know, like I think looking back on my life, it's like I've seen that I've been in worlds and I've kind of like learned to navigate them, and then
Mm,
I've kind of jumped out of them, and I've
yeah.
gone in other worlds, learned to navigate it, and then I just jump out of it, and
That's
it's
a
like
good thing though, man. That's I
it
think so. I think
definitely
it's a real good thing. And it's probably not a popular thing
right. But it
because
can lead to lots of opportunities and growth and all that other stuff. And but moving to LA, I guess like you know, if I had been more like specifically goal oriented, I would have gotten to certain things quicker. But I was just like, I want to play with all my friends as much as I can. We ended up starting some bands, like we started Kneebody, and we just kind of went to the moon with that.
is that still touring? Is that still going on? What's the
Well,
status of anybody?
I jumped out 3 years ago, and so I was a part of the band for 18 years.
I know that's
But the band is still very much alive, and I mean, they make music now with Nate, who you've met.
yeah. Nate just makes him. It's
Who,
really funny listening to him play with himself, play with himself, and then to play
yeah,
with Kneebody, because I watched more Kneebody stuff, like sort of prepping for
yeah,
this interview,
right,
where Nate was just like his own gig, and his playing, I got to tell you, it's really different with
yeah,
it. You know, as a drummer, which of course you can't play bass and drums and be as good as a drummer when you're just playing drums. It's not
yeah.
physiologically possible.
Oh my God, Nate's like, I could, you know, there should just be a station just
All
about,
Nate, all
yeah,
20,
all the time.
all the time.
He, I can't say enough how incredible it was to get to be it. And, you know, I mean, he's still one of my closest friends. I
Yeah.
love Nate so much. And, but I can't say enough how incredible it was to be in a band really with all those guys, like
Yeah.
all, like for me, I remember when we started, it was like, this is a super group, and nobody gives a shit about any of us, but it was like, I just saw these guys. It's like Shane's the best trumpet player I know, hands
Mm.
down, and Ben's, like, it's just going all the way around to, to Adam, to Ben, to Nate, and it's like, this band is so incredible, and
Yeah.
the music that everybody writes is incredible. Like
Yeah.
I just love, the songs that Adam would write, or the songs that Ben would write, or Shane writes these incredible songs, and Nate, and then to get to play in a band, for that many years with all of those guys, and to be the bass player with Nate Wood for so many years was,
What a rhythm section, man.
oh yeah, it was
Yeah.
incredible. And it was also like, it was so liberating too, because talking about getting over your demons, like, I remember the first time I met Nate, he was probably like 18 or something, and we were on a gig. I think I'm like 4 years older than him, and we were on a gig together, and he just asked me a couple questions about like my amp that just showed me like, holy shit, this guy knows his stuff like way more than
Oh,
I
because
do.
as a drummer, he's
Yeah, it's
approaching
like,
you as a drummer.
yeah, we're just like loading out, and he's like, yeah, like what, like what kind of, he just asked me these specific questions about the amp that I was like, oh shit, this guy's, and then he sits down and plays, and it's like, oh my God, his drumming. And I just remember like it just sinking in how deep he is on every, and fully formed he is as a young man. And I remember, and then we were playing at a cafe one night, and I remember he just like grabbed my bass, and he might have played like 3 notes. And you can just tell with some people, it's like he played like 3 notes, and it was like, holy shit, this guy's amazing. Like, oh my God.
Well, he has a
And
big family history too. So I
oh
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah,
crazy pedigree, but he's, that for me was one of the most incredible experiences, just to, year after year, night after night, record, like a project after project, or what all the years spent working with him, and just getting to hear him, and getting to hear his take on music, and getting to kind of like, work with him in lots of different situations. We played with lots of different artists too, as like as a rhythm section, and it was amazingly confidence building, and it was also like the hard work that it took to get better. It was just incredible. It was wonderful to get to work with him so much. Yeah, it was. I mean, I can't say enough.
yeah. When I saw the two of you playing together, it was a different light. Again, not that he's a bad drummer but I really didn't get the full Nate scope just watching him focus on a solo act. When I watched the Kneebody stuff,
it was always just so much fun, and like, and that's what it got to, where it was just like, holy shit, this is really fun, and then it definitely moved through all the stages.
yeah,
Like the stages of like, I guess that's what I was getting at earlier. Like that was a thing that's always been a thing to get over, and I think that's a thing for all musicians, where it's just like, you're always kind of like, even if you can be, as kind of like not affected by it as I seem to have been, I'm always affected by other people's abilities or my inability to do certain things, and I'm always reacting to that in one way or another. And it was such a great experience to get to play so closely with the drummer that's one of the best drummers I'll ever play with, but he also happens to be probably one of the best bass players I'll ever have. And it's
yeah.
like, and like, so you have to ask yourself the cold hard question of like, who the fuck am I? Like, why am
Right.
I here?
Yeah.
And but then, which is true, and it was just like a thing to finally get to be like, oh no, like this is what I am here to do. I'm here to serve this song. I'm here to serve this music. I'm here to do a job. I'm not here to be everything. It was a really great kind of coming to reality moment, and coming into my own as, like owning who I was as a musician, that eventually got to a place where, yeah, if I get called for an opportunity to work with a great artist like Bruce Springsteen, I'm going to learn as many songs of his, not only the songs that we're going to do, I'm
Right.
going to learn every single song that I think he's going to call, because I don't want to be the guy that's like, yeah, let's play Born to Run just for the hell of it. And I'm like, yeah, A flat, or like. But I think like getting to kind of come into my own,
Yeah.
like working with guys, like the guys in Kneebody really kind of helped to bring me to a place where I really felt comfortable in my own skin in that way.
Yeah. That was funny. No, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Let me ask you. I want to go back. Let's go back to some of your specific gigs that you have had from a production and a performance standpoint. And I'd like to know, Kaveh,
well,
yep.
I didn't quite get to that, and like that was the thing. Like I just like I was always trying to angle towards production in one way or another, and that's kind of what you were getting at.
Yeah. Well, because
yeah, because I've always just really enjoyed being a part of the making stuff process, and I love collaborating with people, and I also at the same time I love being a bass player where it's just like, this is my vision, help me realize that, and I love kind of stepping in as some of my, like the bass players who I just love and people I know and I just admire and are just so great at doing, like they can just kind of step in and just like, oh, this is what you want to do, like let's just try to make that happen. But I also love being a part of just the conception of the song or conception of the project, and I really started moving in that direction consciously. I remember it related to Kneebody, because I remember when Nate and Ben, they moved to New York. I remember just being like, oh shit, am I supposed to move to New York? Like you always do that with your closest friends. Like you're just like, they make big life decisions and it's like, oh, am I supposed to do that too? And
how did you not? That was because you had a family then, though.
Yeah.
No, 18 years ago.
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't. Yeah.
We didn't have kids yet. But yeah, when they moved out there, I was just like, no, I'm going to try to really invest in, in worlds out here in LA that I had. Cause it's like for years, I was just like trying to be the bass player that Nels Cline would call for a gig, and I ended up getting to do a little tour with Nels Cline, and it was incredible.
I had him on here. He's got another guy with an amazing story, but he's originally from out there, if I remember, like from the Bay Area, I think, right?
No, I think he's from here. I think he grew up in Culver City, maybe. But maybe,
okay,
don't quote me on that. But yeah, I got to work with him, with Carla Boslich, she did a version of The Redheaded Stranger. We did a tour, like a van tour together, and I was subbing for Devin Hoff, and then I ended up working with him on, we did a show at Largo with John Bryan and my friend Scott Seaver, and we did Neil Young songs from Neil Young albums that weren't big records, like
that's cool. Deep tracks of Neil Young, basically.
Deep tracks, yeah. And that's cool. But yeah, that was kind of always my path in LA, and at a certain point I was just like, I really want to just get involved in the in the writing scene, the production scene, and it just took like real just tangible like moves on my end to try to like steer the ship towards that.
What was the one thing? I listen, the truth is, if you are a producer, you get a lot of leeway there, because every producer I know that's a proficient on an instrument, they're playing on the record. They're usually contributing to writing. So if you like doing those things, it's a great, smart thing to do. So I can't blame you for wanting to do that, because you have the talent to, and you had the desire to do those things. So why the hell wouldn't you? Again, I'm sure it's not popular because people tend to be jealous of other people's success. It's fun. It's an unfortunate thing. I remember when, I don't know, a while ago, my wife had this friend, this is probably 18, 19 years ago. And, my business started doing real well. And she said, oh, I'm going to tell so-and-so I'm so happy. I said, don't. And she goes, why? I said, because she's not going to be happy for you. And she goes, no, she's my friend. I'm like, okay. Oh, I know that. I know the end of this movie. And sure enough, she was like real funny about it. And I don't know why people aren't like supportive of people's, if you're lucky, one or two of your close friends will be, and your mom and dad or your kids or your spouse. That's it, man. It's
Yeah.
just the way it goes. It's unfortunate, but I think that's a real good move that you did. And why the hell, if I was there, if I was in music, that's what I'd want to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, I think that the road that we're on is kind of long in a lot of ways, especially if you want to have longevity in this
Mhm.
business. And I tend to hope and be optimistic about my friendships, and I couldn't be more happy and proud of everybody, with everything they're doing. And I just know it's a crazy inconsistent ride. I know there are a lot
Totally.
of ups and downs, and it's a fine line to walk, especially in the social media sphere, of how much we promote ourselves, or how much we get sucked into what everybody else is doing, and when people are working and other people are not working, how that makes everybody feel. And I just remember when social media started, it just all felt so weird. It's like, what are we doing? Like, why are we talking about all this stuff in this way? And some people have like, and it's, for me, it's always an evolving, like, contracting, retracting kind
It,
of situation, where it's like, it's all fluid, where it's like, sometimes I love hearing about everything, and I love kind of letting everybody know about everything that's going on. But at the same time, it's like, you can get sucked into that, and just, if you're prone to, you know if you're prone to whatever, like the voices in your head and the unhappiness and all that other stuff, it's like,
yeah.
it's not a great idea. It's like, so I get it, and I don't know, there's a lot of there's a lot of mental health around, especially when all of this beautiful, incredible stuff, this that we call music, that's built on wonder and just like making cool shit, turns into like a career, and it's not
Right.
a true career, where you're just kind of like, yeah, hopefully not fixating on all that stuff too much, but
No, and the problem is, and I wish I remember who said this, but someone said to me, a guest I had on the show here, they said, the thing about social media is it's the highlight reel, man. There's a lot of tape left on the floor that you never
out.
get to see that would totally, if someone put down, you don't, you see the thing. So happy to play with these brilliant instrument, brilliant, group of cast, blah, blah, blah. You won't hear someone say, thank God I got to get a $50 session because I couldn't eat. And I'm not saying that in a
Right.
cavalier way, but that's what's going on
Right.
too.
Is going on too. Exactly. And some people, and it just boils down to like people's personalities, like how they want, they want to, or just not want to represent themselves. And
Yeah.
You're right. And
I think you
so,
got to figure that out. And it's not an easy thing to do, especially for older cats, like that didn't grow up like our kids. It's funny.
right.
My older kids, the older son is 31 and then 29, my other one, and my daughter's 21, almost 22. And they will come to me and they're like, thank God we didn't grow up. We could still talk to people.
Right.
They're not worried about it. Whereas my daughter, thank God, is really good with people, but she grew up. I remember walking in that room one day. She was her and three friends, and they're all sitting there on their phones talking to other people. I just looked at that and I said, this is like out of the Jetsons or something like that.
Well, they grow up with it. They
Right.
grew up seeing us doing it, in our own ways, and then they see everybody doing it, and it's understandable. It's also like the dopamine that goes with that,
Bingo. Yeah.
and the rush that you get from, like a new notification, whatever it may be, what it could lead to, is just,
I don't have any notifications. I never get pinged for anything ever, 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 man.
Right.
I don't have time or patience or interest really. I just
Good.
yeah, I don't want to, I'm not motivated by like stuff like that. I'm more motivated by a conversation like this or an interact, because then that stimulates me mentally, emotionally. This doesn't for some reason,
That's great. That's you're definitely better off for it. That's for sure.
I can't handle my life without it, Kaveh. I'm challenged enough. I don't need to introduce anything more to challenge me.
Yeah, it's tough enough.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Right. No, I hear you.
But back to you becoming I think that's a real good thing to do. I think career wise, and this is not this is the bad thing. You can't say this, but career wise, it's a real smart thing to do. I know that's not why you did it, but if it is, so what? You know, I mean, like, what is wrong with being ambitious and saying, hey, I'd like to further my career, and I happen to like these things, so why don't I do this? You know, so I think
Yeah.
it was real
Yeah.
smart. Talk to me about
Oh,
the
thanks.
you're welcome, Cynthia Erivo. You are working with her, you're co-writing, and you're doing production. How did that come about? And for maybe, I know she's a British artist. We said singer, songwriter, actress. If you want to talk about her, how did you get hooked up with this whole thing with her?
She's a powerhouse. My friend Ty was managing her at the time, and kind of wanted to see how she worked and how she wrote. And she knew that I wrote and I produced. And so it was just as simple as, we just set up a session. And I knew about her because Ty had told me about how incredible she was. She'd already won a Tony, and she's going to have the EGOT. I think she's just one away from getting that. And she's got, incredible, like, she's just so talented in everything that she does. But we set up a session, I guess 2 days in the studio. And the first day we worked together, we wrote an incredible song, and it just felt so great. And the next day we got together, next day we got back in, and we wrote, she was like, I want to write a song that's like very cinematic. And we wrote a song, and that was one of the songs that appears on the record. It's called Hero. And it just was like, she's the real deal. Not only is she an incredible singer and an actress, but the 95% of those words are her, and she's just incredible. And so we had written those two songs, and then maybe a few months later, my friend Mike Viola, who you should know about, he's incredible songwriter, producer, just has done so much stuff. He was working at Verve at the time, and he's just like, the partnership that you guys have is so great. You should just really follow that up. Like, don't wait for that opportunity to come for you. Like, just try to make it happen again. Just try to write together again. And I was like, yeah, I should try to do that. And I reached out to Cynthia, who is extremely busy. Like, she's just always shooting films and shows and, running in between different things. And she was in New York at the time. And I was just like, I want to come out. Let's write again. Like, what afternoon can we have in common that we can kind of get together? And we nailed like an evening down. And
Did you actually go out to New York?
Yeah, I booked a rehearsal studio up in Midtown that my friend Nabate had recommended, and I stayed at a friend's, my friend David Benny, great saxophone player. I stayed at his apartment. That he lives in LA, but he had an apartment free out there, and I went out there for 2 days and booked the place, and we showed up, and we wrote another song in the in the little room there, and that's the song "I Might Be in Love with You" that's on the record. And I think the guitars that are on there on the record are from that writing session, and that song I just love. I love how it came to be. It's on. I posted it on my Instagram, like we actually moved into a bigger room together to actually get to like spread out and get to work together.
You played guitar on that? Is that what you're saying though?
Yeah, I played guitar and bass on it.
Wow.
And,
all right, dude, I got a bunch of questions. First of all, serious pat on your back for having the balls to do that. Was it scary when your buddy said, hey, you need to make that happen again?
No, because at
Awesome.
that point I had already done a lot more songwriting and producing, but that song definitely wouldn't have happened if he hadn't had pushed me to try to get that, to try to get that opportunity to happen, because it was yeah, it's one of my favorite songs that I've been a part of, and yeah, it's yeah, so that's how that came about. And then that record came out about a little over a month ago. So Yeah.
But look at you. Look, I have this. Who said this? Oh, that guy Mike Miller I mentioned. He said a quote I put on my wall. He said, "If you're going to wait for things, we were talking about vacations or something, and he said, if you're going to wait for these things to fall into your lap, they're not going to happen." So that's a perfect example. You went out, you booked the room, you booked the studio. I don't know if you paid for it or someone else paid for it, how that works.
Yeah.
You paid for it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I just want to break this down because people are mistakenly, I don't know why, mistakenly led to believe that stuff just happens. Like, like there's a fucking Harry Potter, someone waving a wand and like, boom, you're this, That's not how life works. You booked the room, you paid for the room, you paid for the flight. Yeah. So you had probably $5,000 or close to that on the line, or a few grand anyway, right? And
not quite that much, but yeah, I had some money.
Yeah, you had some skin in the game. There was no guarantee of that wasn't like a guaranteed return on that investment. Totally. And you contacted her and she said sure, and then you made something happen with it, and that's how stuff works. Man, I'm so happy to hear that's a great story.
Yeah, and that's really how the writing and producing thing is, which is it can be daunting and it could feel really crazy, but it's like leap after faith after leap after faith, leap of faith,
leap of faith, yeah,
where you're just kind of like, a lot is on spec. You're always developing. You're always developing a song or an idea or a project, and so that's a big part of it, is just that kind of a thing where it's just like, well, let's just try to make this thing happen. And that's what's in common with all of the, all of the not putting myself in that category, but all the great producers that you hear about are all people who take these chances, and not like crazy, it's not crazy like Lewis and Clark kind of chances, but it's just chances where it's just like, yeah, this might not ever see the light of day.
Right.
But we've just got to do it. We've got to try it. And like the people who are always just so inspiring are like older or just established, it doesn't have to be older, but just like established people, they all have that in common, where they're just fine with taking chances and fine with just we'll see where this goes,
Right. Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That's such a good story. I'm so happy that worked out for you.
Yeah, thanks.
What's the latest chance you've taken?
Oh man. I mean, it's so, yeah, my reality these days has been a crazy just mix of, it's just a lot of these kind of sessions day after day,
right.
where we're writing songs, not every day, but probably like four songs a week, and
yeah, but 4 songs a week with these also, how did you get in? These are like high level successful pop artists. How did you get into, and also I'm sure you went to your buddy Ty and said, hey, not hook me up with this person, but dude, I'm interested in doing this. If an opportunity comes up, give me a call.
Yeah. I mean, there's always something like that where you want people to know that you're
hell
down
yeah
stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, you have to. You can't, it's not like if you build it, they will come. That's shit. That's in the movies, man.
Yeah. But it's never like, none of these things are ever from the same place. It's just, there's always, getting to work with people just comes from lots of different places and lots of, people. And that's kind of interesting too. It's like, after years and years of getting to work with people, it's like, you just kind of, people know you for certain camps, and that's right. Not your whole story, so
well, that's another thing I want to point out about success. People always think it's like, I did this one thing and everything exploded. I mean, once in a blue moon that might happen, but usually it's like I did 50 things and 5 of them worked really well, or 5, but that's more like it. So like, you're planting seeds all over.
Yeah.
Not to plant seeds to because you like what you're doing, and like some of those seeds take fruit,
Well, and also, yeah, like, you know, in like in the production world, if you're fully working on it every single day, which, you know, is you know, if you're really the, even then your odds are they're, you know, it's like it's literally,
They're
you know,
not super high. Yeah.
not high. So you know, like you can write 100 songs and maybe 7 of them will see the light of day,
If
you
you're
know,
lucky. Yeah.
if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's, you know, that's where Zen is really needed, you know.
Yeah. No, but you too, but you're smart enough to know this, but you're also smart enough to know I still need to do my day gig. If someone needs a session, I'm around. And like,
Totally.
you
Yeah.
know, you have to, if you want to be successful at what you like, my prediction is like, if we sit in 5, 6, 7 years from now, you'll probably be doing 75% production because what you're doing is obviously really working. You're in like karmically, to sound like I'm in California, you're in you're and not in the Bronx. You're in the right place because you're picking up steam and you're. So go back to how did you get with these massive? I mean, okay, let me the names. You know, Springsteen, Ringo Starr, Shania Twain, The Weeknd. I mean, De La Soul, Bruno Mars. These are Meshell Ndegeocello. These are all, you know, they're
All different
massive.
places. Yeah, all different, you know, all different circumstances. You know, De La Soul was huge for me. That was through this band that you know, we would play every Sunday night at the Temple Bar, which was this club that opened in LA, like right when we all moved here. I moved to LA in '99, and that was a big, you know, the like kind of community epicenter that we were all a part of. A lot of great musicians were there. Just a lot of really close friends were there, and I was there probably for like maybe three, better part of 4 years. You know, playing in maybe like 2 or 3 of the bands, like at least 4 nights out of the week. You know, like
Wow.
and it was just home base. And every Sunday night, we had this dance band that would play, and we were also the rhythm section for this group, this hip hop orchestra that we had started, this 70-piece orchestra called Dakar. And
70-piece orchestra.
yeah,
You can't do like an 8-piece
yeah,
orchestra.
well,
How the hell do you even fit 70 people in a room, man?
everybody just spills out onto the floor. And the band ended up getting to play Disney Hall where the LA Phil plays, and we played, you know, we
Oh,
did
wow.
Jazz Fest in New Orleans. We
That's
did
pretty cool.
yeah, we got to do some really cool stuff. But the core group of that band was called the Rhythm Room All Stars, because the band was called or the place called the Rhythm Room, and a lot of those guys were Denver guys. Like Josh was in the band, Davey, who was also in the Zombies, was in the band. Double G, the saxophone player, was in the Zombies, was in the band. So there's a lot of old Denver friends and a lot of other great play. And we played like a lot of Latin music and Afrobeat, like Fela Kuti kind of
Mhm.
music, and we played a lot of funk and, you know, hip hop or whatever. And then I started getting busy with other bands, other artists touring, and I couldn't make all the rehearsals, so I kind of got kicked out of the band, and it was fine because these
Right.
are my best friends. I got
Sure.
it, understood, and but then they started backing up hip hop groups, like kind of classic hip hop groups, like they were backing up like Big Daddy Kane, and backing up um, Ghostface Killer,
That's so
you know, just
funny.
different groups like
Those are
that,
huge names.
huge names, and
Yeah.
Eric B
Yeah.
and Rakim, and and uh and then they started doing De La Soul, and I was just like, fuck you guys. Like, just because, you know, to all of us, De La was like, that was, you know, I was the right age. Like the year I started playing bass in '89 was when they came out with their first record, and
Mhm.
that was like, that just spoke to our generation. Like every single record of theirs a was a huge statement, and they would go in a new direction, and it would be like, you know, they were kind of like a Beatles, you know, in that every record came out and they were improving and going leaps and beyond where their fans would have expected. And I was such a huge fan, and so was you know, we were all huge fans of that band, and they started backing them up. And I remember I kept asking, I was just like, are you guys writing? Are you guys working on, you know, like, you know, what's going to, you know, like, cause they're just touring, like you're doing, like they would do a run in Australia, they would do a run wherever. And as the live band backing them up. And then all of a sudden they reached, one of the guys, Davey, reached out to me, and he was just like, "Yeah, we're writing in the studio," and he was like, "You should come in. Why don't you come in and write?" And I was just like, dropped everything and ran, and it was a part of his. And there was a lot of friends of ours and a lot of great musicians who were part of those sessions. But I dropped everything and was just like, as many of those sessions as I could be a part of. I was there and got to make music with, like, those guys were my absolute,
Right.
that would have been something that if you had told me when I was just starting to play that you'll get to make a record with them, and we made it, we all made this record together, and it was an incredible experience. Like,
That's so cool, man.
and to get to tell them, like, after kind of like earning their trust and not being like a kind of a, an awkward guy, like after like earning, like, okay, they like what I do, they like who I am, all that other stuff, like finally getting to tell them, like, you guys, I just have to say, like, I'm just gonna say it once,
Yeah, right.
man, you guys are like the Beatles of hip hop, and it was like, that was incredible.
Yeah, it's always weird. You don't want to come off like a fanboy, but
No way.
Yeah. I had that one. What happened to me once when I had Ian Pace on the show.
Oh wow.
I said, Ian, man, I'm really sorry, but I just have to tell you, I feel like I'm 15 now. And he goes, Craig, that's all right. I know how you feel, because when I'm on stage, I feel like I'm 15 too. I was like, how cool. I know, how nice was that? I was
really cool.
I know, that was so, because I felt horrible saying it, because I don't want to be like every other guy he speaks to, but I was like so moved by talking to him.
Yeah.
Beck, how did you get that? How did that come up? And I know he's had his bands are outstanding musicians.
Well, so that's a little misleading, and I'm glad that we can clear this up. So I am a huge fan of his, and love his music, and have loved his bands. I got to hear his band, like, a couple of his bands play over the years. So that was actually one of those things that I did audition for, and I did pretty shitty job of.
Why is that on your Wikipedia? Someone needs to fix that.
Yeah, I'm on this record called Songwriters, and he did a record where he wrote, he did music where he wrote the music, he wrote the sheet music, and that's how he sold the album. And like, his concept was like, I'm going to do it like the old fashioned way. I'm going to literally write out the sheet music that you could just play at home on a piano or something like that. And then they released, under his name, an album of different producers playing those songs. And
okay.
So Joe Henry produced a song with it's me and Larry Goldings. I'm playing upright bass and Larry's playing piano, and then Swamp Dogg, who's like a classic.
Yeah, I know who Swamp Dogg. My buddy played on his last record. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Swamp Dogg sings. So we're on this Beck album, but we never worked on.
Oh, okay, with Beck. Okay, yeah. So it's okay. I get it. I totally get it. But still, man, that's pretty flattering, because anything in his realm. I mean, he's got top musicians.
Oh man, yeah, he's incredible. Yeah.
Ringo.
Yeah, Ringo. I got to play on a couple of songs on his last two projects, and that was 100% through Sam Hollander. So, do you know Sam?
I do not.
Sam's a great songwriter and producer, and he brought me in kind of after Ringo had tracked, and I tracked bass on those songs. And
cool.
Just dream of a lifetime to get to work on those songs. That's amazing.
Cool. Yeah. Was Greg the drummer on that, or was Ringo drumming?
Ringo and Blair Cinta plays doubles on actually on both of those songs. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Talk about, you have co-exec. What is co-executive producer? What does that mean? It sounds like.
Oh yeah, on the Christmas record. Yeah. So Sabrina Claudio is an amazing, incredible R&B artist, singer. I've worked on her last 3 albums that are out, and then her upcoming record that's going to be coming out early next year. And
you did all the bass tracks on there.
Well, I did on all of the projects that I've been a part of. I've done I've usually co-produced with her longtime producer, is this great young producer who's called Sad Money, and we did
Sad Money.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's a sad name. You should change anything. That's like an opposite, like Sad Money. Usually
Yeah,
Happy Money. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. He plays with that too. He's got like a moniker with like the sad emoji face and then the money sign. You know, like that's his.
Yeah.
But he's really talented. That's a great example of a collaboration that I was never expecting, and all of a sudden turned into really amazing stuff. We started working together maybe in 2018. It was the head of her label at the time brought me in as
God, that's a pretty good call.
yeah, definitely.
Wow.
And that was brought me in to collaborate and to write and co-produce. And usually it's just kind of coming in with a bunch of different instruments and helping to write the song and co-produce the music. And Mick, or Sad Money, is a really talented he's a talented musician himself, but he's also just incredible at programming, and he's a great engineer. And but I'll never forget the first time we worked together. I always talk about this, where it's just like, you know, gets into generations, like working with younger musicians. Like I remember walking in, and at the time she was probably 19 or 20 and he was probably in his late 20s. And I came in and I just, you know, it's like, and I brought the kitchen sink, you know, at that time. I brought in an upright bass, I brought in an
Right.
acoustic guitar, electric guitar, an amp, keyboards, different outboard, you know, like in my computer rig, you know, it was like if you had a stop action film of like all this gear like coming into the studio, it would have been like, you know, just kind of funny how it filled up. And we had worked and worked and worked, or I started working on this idea with the engineer and them, and they weren't participating quite as much. Like they were just kind of in their own world, and I just didn't like know how to kind of break through and kind of establish a connection. Usually like when I play, that's like a great point of like, oh, he can play, like great, like here we go. But for whatever reason, we didn't quite get to that. So I kept like laying down track after track of ideas for this musical idea that we had started, which was just kind of basic, like, you know, a couple of chords. And at a certain point, I remember being like, I don't think this session is like working out. I'm not sure if this is really, you know, maybe working out. Like maybe I should just start packing up my stuff and taking off, you know, and, you know, like beat Rush Hour back, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
And so I started packing up all my gear and packed up my car, and then I got back into the studio. And I remember Mick was just like, is everything cool? And I was just like, I think I'm good. Like I've done, you know, like we've got a lot to work with. And at that point I was just like, I'm going to stick around, but at least my car is loaded up.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stick around to just, I'm not going to try to, you know, like, but I'd kind of like written it off. I was just like, this is one of those situations that's probably not a fit. That's not
Right.
really, because she hadn't sung at all at that point. Like she was just kind of sitting there the whole time, like hour after hour. It's like maybe 3 hours of just kind of me laying down this stuff and not really getting a vibe of how, if she liked it or not. And I remember she was just like, you know, it was probably 5 o'clock. She's like, I got to leave at 5:30, guys. I should probably sing something. And in my mind, I'm like, you
Hello.
probably sing something. And then, so I remember the engineer put up a mic in front of her. And, you know, like, again, like a couple of chords, like lots of different ideas are going on in the music, but it's like, it's still like, I haven't heard a melody. I don't know what the song's about. Like, what are we doing? You know, blah, blah, blah. And the whole time she's just been on her phone, and I'm just kind of thinking,
I was just there, you know, I was thinking when you
days.
were saying that, you know, I was like, kids these days, a lot of this is generational, because I don't want to sound like an old man, and I'm sure for the five.
I was the old man, like for sure. I was just kind of like, oh man, you know, like if it had been me, you know, like I would have, you know, whatever, like, you know, I would have looked them in the eye, and you know, like all that.
They
you
don't
know.
talk.
Well, so anyway, so she's just like, I got to go in 30 minutes. I should probably sing something. I'm like, you're probably right. You probably should sing
They're
something.
like tick tick tick.
Well, then the engineer pushes record, and she sings an incredible song, and she's sings this incredible melody with lyrics, and this whole time she's been writing lyrics.
Oh.
And my jaw is on the floor, and she's just singing. She's singing incredibly, and it's just like this beautiful, like, you know, it's and my jaw's on the floor, and again, Mick's just kind of like in his own world, kind of like doing his own thing, and my jaw's on the floor, and then you know, I instantly hear like one place the note could go, like maybe instead of going ba da, you could go ba da, like to this one other place, like maybe you know, like you know, we already have this amazing song now. And so I suggested, I was just like, you could go like with this one note. And then she's like, yeah, okay, cool. And she sang that. And she did that one thing. And then she's like, stood up and she's like, sorry, guys, I got to take off. It's nice to meet you. And she takes off. And then my jaw is on the floor. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? And then all of a sudden, Mick opens up his laptop and just like proceeds to destroy, like make the most incredible, you know, track around what I had done, what she had done, and all of a sudden it like comes into focus. And what he had been doing is just that's his rhythm, and that was his rhythm of working. And that I'll never forget. I tell the story, and they, you know,
Interesting.
and that song ended up becoming a single. It ended up becoming her single. It's called All to You, and it came out, and it's a great song, and it's but it was literally like one of those things where I totally read the room wrong, and I didn't see that it's like, and that's the thing. I think older
That's
musicians,
yeah,
where
that's generational, man.
it's generational, and you also like you never know. I mean, you just never know who you're in the room with, and that's something you've probably heard a lot,
Yeah.
and where it's just like, you know, I talk about this all the time, where it's like if I, you know, like let's say you get to work with Kanye West, you know, you're in the studio with Kanye West, and like
Mhm.
you know, like, and you're working with him, you know, you want to make a good impression on him, obviously, but you also really want to make a great impression on everybody else, like the guy who's getting coffee in that room, the guy who's, you know, the guys who's setting up a microphone and scurrying off into the corner, like that's literally the guy that's going to be producing Kanye in like
Right.
3 years. Like,
Right.
and you saw that in the Beatles movie, right? Like,
I didn't see the Beatles movie, but yeah, I
the
know.
Beatles movie, there's like, you know, there's Glenn Johns at the desk, and there's George Martin standing behind him, and they're all sitting in there, and in the corner there's Alan Parsons just like sitting there like working on stuff, and then there's Chris Thomas who produced like Roxy Music and the Sex Pistols first record and
And
In
you
Excess,
too. Didn't he produce you too?
The Pretenders.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris Thomas is just sitting there in the corner. It's like
He was like the assistant engineer or something.
he had worked on the White Album, but I think for those sessions, I think he was just probably around and he popped in, you know,
Right.
but I don't know that so those kind of sessions are crazy to me, you know, like getting to work with people, and it's like it's always like just adjusting my parameters at like, you know, um what to expect, and to expect the unexpected. And so with Sabrina, I ended up being a part of the next few projects, and we ended
So
up
so it worked. Some
working great.
in
And then
spite of all the weirdness. Yeah.
yeah, and then so for her album that came out last year that they re-released on vinyl this last month, her Christmas record, she made a Christmas record. Um I was working on that with a great producer songwriter named Nasri Atwe, and the three of us wrote the whole record, and then we um, co-produced it. Well, you know, made all the music for it, and then that's the thing that Alicia Keys ended up becoming, you know, a part of it, and the Weeknd's on another song, and it was a really cool project to be a
That's
part of.
awesome. Did you work? Were they in the room with you, Alicia Keys, on the weekend, or did they do their stuff on their own time?
Yeah, for those songs, the songs had kind of been written, and then they did their work in their studio, and then
Mm.
they sent everything in. So yeah,
Good story, man.
I could, yeah, you know, again, feel free to skip through my stories.
No, no, no. You know what? These are really interesting. Do you know? You probably know David Levita, guitar
Very
player.
well. I love him. We have constant chess games going.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, we're both chess players. I just love Dave so much. I've known him. I've known him since I was probably 18. I remember getting my first like kind of like big LA gig, getting flown out to LA to work, and I got to work with Dave, and that was with Darren, that drummer from the Zombies. Like we
Yeah.
were playing with Dave with this artist. But yeah, Anyway,
he was telling, I think it was Dave. He was telling me a story. I think he worked with Dr. Dre, and I think he sat around the studio all day, and all of a sudden, he says, Dr. Dre stands up and said, "Okay, man, show me what you got." And then it's like no warm up, no like. So I hear things like this, and it's just really nice to hear when it all works out like that.
oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
You've worked in so many genres, and I know you grew up listening. Now that I've heard the story a little bit, to so many different things. Do you have a particular genre that you're most comfortable, either like that you like the most to listen to or to work in?
I guess like the music that I've just spent a ton of time working on, being able to play comfortably is like definitely like that kind of classic bass playing, like a la a la like Paul McCartney or James Jamerson, like so like R&B, um R&B, but mixed with, you know, like that kind of classic rock kind of sound, and how that fits in with all the modern styles. It can definitely fit in that world. But yeah, like I there's a lot of music I just find myself listening to just over and over again, just because it's like desert island stuff, you know, like Meter's Rejuvenation, or Freddie King's album Getting Ready,
Oh,
or
Freddie King is just a beast.
you know,
He's amazing.
yeah, the Stones, like The Run with like Beggar's Banquet and Let It Bleed and Sticky Fingers,
Yeah, the
Exile,
Mick Taylor years.
and yeah, right, and the you know, just all the great Beatles records, Joni Mitchell's Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. So that's a big record for me, and then, you know, but then a lot of other things like generationally that kind of fit with my years too. You know, there's lots of different music, but that era is like really definitely home for me.
Kaveh, tell me some low points or dark periods you've had to deal with, and how'd you get through them?
Well, I mean, a big one would be, you know, I am a dad, and very happy, proud dad, and but there, you know, my daughter's mom and I, we got divorced. We got divorced maybe about 4 years ago, and that was a huge low point. That was really hard. It was a tough, you know, a tough road to go through, and but I'm happy to say that we're doing a lot better right now. We're co-parenting, and we've got a good relationship, and it took a while to kind of get to that level.
Yeah.
I'm also engaged. I'm very much in a great place that way, and found a wonderful woman who's just an incredible woman that we're actually getting married next year.
Dude, congratulations. I don't.
But yeah, but saying that on the tail end of the divorce was a really low point. That was very tough. It was hard to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The it's different now. I don't know, you know, that you're getting married again is not you as a surprise, but like nobody gets married now. It's quite funny. It's like, you know, I talk to my kids, and you know, each kid is different, but sometimes, you know, some of them are like, why would I get married?
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm just excited. I'm just really excited for it, and I am excited for that with my kids too, like for them to be a part of that, and to feel, you know, like, you know, just kind of like the family growing and change and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, good for you, man. Congratulations. I wish you a lot of years of happiness. I was divorced many years ago, and it is a weird thing. Getting married is weird, but it's different. And, you know, there's no rule book, you know, and you came from divorced parents, so you didn't know, how do I make this stick? Right. You know, my parents weren't divorced. It was just a horrible environment. I didn't know how to make, you know, what the right thing to do was.
Right.
You know, so but unwinding that shit is even worse.
Yeah.
So I know, man, you know, I've been there. I know it's not fun at all.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, it's tough, but that's that kind of stuff. Trials and tribulations are definitely a part of life,
Yeah,
so.
that's it. Well, congratulations. I wish you a lot of luck, man.
Thank you.
That's really cool. I've been with my wife now 29 years. So
I think that's wonderful. I've heard you talk about your relationship, and I think that's great. I
it's
think
my
it's really
greatest accomplishment. I take no credit for it, but that's my greatest accomplishment. I don't know
that
how the hell that
that
happened.
can't yeah, and that can't be said lightly. Like
I
that's
don't know how that
that's
happened. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Uh, tell me favorite musicians you've enjoyed playing with.
Yeah, definitely the Kneebody guys. Like that's just been heaven
Yeah.
to work with them. And just different people that are like popping into my mind. Like I worked for a good many years with Colin Hay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I love Colin so much. He's a friend. He's like it was just incredible getting to work with him, like when we did. And he can write and sing and play a song as good as, if not better than anybody. He's the best. I love Call. And yeah, kind of like everybody's got their own thing. I mean, musician wise, like I love playing with Jeff Babko. We've briefly talked about. Jeff Babko's big. I love playing with Matt Chamberlain. He's a great
Drummer.
drummer.
Yeah.
And getting to play with Josh Lopez, who I mentioned, Chris Bruce, great guitar player.
Yeah, I had Chris on the show.
Did
Yeah.
you?
Yeah,
Oh,
he's a good guy.
I love
Yeah.
Chris. Yeah, just so
Super talented that guy is, man.
I love Chris a lot. And
Yeah.
he's so much fun to play with and so great.
He's another guy, bass and guitar.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really, really good at
Yeah.
both. Yeah. Yeah, there's a long list of people I just love playing with, and artists. And I mean, everybody. I really can say that there's like nobody from my credits down to collaborators like that I don't enjoy playing with.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly. Like I really feel lucky to have gotten to work with people I really love to get to play with.
That's great, man. Tell me best decision you ever made.
Oh my God.
Getting divorced. Wouldn't that be funny if you said that? It's one of your low points. But you know what? It is my. It's. I wouldn't say it's a best decision, but it was a good decision.
Yeah.
It's
No,
just
it
very
was.
ironic that it's like a low point and a good decision.
Yeah.
Nothing
No.
against your ex,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
It's
No,
just
I mean,
life.
it's life. And yeah, no, I mean, yeah, she's, I mean, it's, that goes without, that's no comment in that.
Yeah.
Best decision I ever made. I mean, yeah, becoming a father and I really have, I can't say enough how, I mean, like my relationship to my kids is always evolving, and getting to, you know, I'm proud of certain decisions, like leaving certain projects for the sake of my family and my own mental well-being, to
Dude,
be
good
able
for
to better
you.
take care of
Self-care, man. You got
that.
to do that shit.
Yeah. Those are big things. And then, you just get into like practical things like financial stuff, learning certain instruments, all that other stuff. Like those are all good decisions to make too, yeah.
Right on, man. You have a hero?
Um, yeah, lots of mentors musically, lots of older musicians that I just really, really look up to. Uh, but the more and more I just think about my dad. He's a huge hero of mine, and I'm just so thankful. One of the great things about COVID, I know that comes with the disclaimer of there's not a lot great, but there are a lot of great things that came out of just getting to spend a lot of quality time with my family, and getting to
Everybody said that.
become closer to my dad.
Good.
That's been incredible. I mean, we've always been pretty close, and we've always had a great relationship that I've really been thankful for. But it's just felt really golden these days, and I'm just really, really thankful for it.
That's great, man. I'm
Yeah,
glad you get to.
he's definitely a hero of mine.
What do you like most about yourself?
Oh my God. I don't know. I have a hard time. I know. I think I like that. I I think I like, and it's something that I get from my dad. I remember my dad would always say, he's just like, I don't understand whenever people say that they're bored. Like he would always say, like, because like, it's like there's just so much to check out. There's so much to, and that's something that I really, I guess, like about myself, that I'm just kind of like, there's always things that I'm interested in. Like whether it's reading or exploring, checking out, like learning about a culture, a history, reading a book, learning a language, playing a game, whatever it is. Like I don't know, like just kind of interest in things. Like I like that about myself, I guess.
Cool.
Hmm.
Happiest moment in your life?
Oh man. Um, I mean, I could say that last night is an example of one of the happiest moments of my life. It's just last night, like cooking the family a really great dinner.
Oh, you
And
must be a great cook if your dad is a chef. Oh,
um,
yeah, man.
well, yeah, no, cooking a decent dinner. I'm nothing like his cooking, but cooking dinner, eating dinner, and then just sitting down playing Sorry with the kids and
Sure.
Sarah, and just like kind of looking around, and that is truly the greatest for me. Like
What
getting
is
to
your
do that.
cooking's the number one hobby for musicians, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like out of the people I've spoke to, it's number one. Yeah, for sure. What do you like cooking?
Um, I should venture out a little bit more. Like I've started doing, because like everybody likes things in bowls now. Like I don't know if you noticed, like
Like,
Chipotle, like
yeah.
bowls. Like you just serve it in a bowl, like a poke bowl. Those things are big. So there's another place out here called Kava, and it's like macrobiotic, like, or whatever, like grains and all that stuff, and everything in a bowl. And like, I was just like, I could just make this shit at home,
Yeah.
like
So
chop
you
up.
make, so you
Well,
just
I
make,
was doing that, and I kind of like grilled a little bit of meat, and then also just put together a bunch of vegetables and some rice and
oh,
everything.
dude, that sounds
Yeah, it was nice.
delicious.
Yeah, it was
God.
delicious. Yeah.
Do you have any, besides cooking, any non-musical superpowers?
I like languages. I speak uh, Italian and French, and I also just I speak a little bit of Farsi,
I was
and
going to ask you that. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know, no real superpowers, but I love to read, and love to love to kind of read about history. That's really interesting to me. Yeah.
Favorite place you've traveled?
Um, Porto,
In
Portugal was.
Portugal. Yeah, I've been there, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Believe
That
it or not.
was
Yeah.
that was surprising. Like I'd never had the urge to ever need to go there, and I went there. I was blown away. I loved that city. Yeah, I love.
Wasn't it crazy? It's like right on the ocean there. It's so gorgeous, wasn't it? Man?
Yeah, and there's that river, and there's the bridge that Gustav Eiffel designed, and just the way that the city is laid out, it just feels
Yeah,
so
the
good,
architecture, everything's different. Did
with
you?
all the blue tiles like on the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know, it was
yeah.
cool there. I'm an animal person. Like there's dogs everywhere. At
Really.
least, yeah. Wherever I was, there was like dogs, is like pigeons in New York City. There was just, I mean, they were very nice. They weren't like just dogs. It was just weird. It was really
That's
funny.
cool. Yeah, I'd love to go back there.
That's funny that I was there. It's the one place in Portugal I've been.
Yeah, yeah, me too. That's the only place in Portugal I've been.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous place. Toughest decision that you've ever had to make, or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Well, I mean, aside from the tough divorce, that's I guess tough decisions have always been kind of stepping away, just deciding when to step away from projects. That's always been really hard. So for me, stepping away from Kneebody was an easy decision to make, but usually like those decisions always kind of really just make sense because they just kind of free up. They end up freeing up time for me to do other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I was leaving this Italian band I was in, or stepping away from, just stepping away from different projects, is that can be a tough decision, but it's 9 times out of 10, or maybe all the time, it's just always felt really like in the long run a good decision to make.
Well, you're such a hustler too, to make stuff happen, that you probably have confidence in yourself at this point that, hey, I know I'm not going to be sitting around with my thumbs up my ass for very long, if at all. I mean, you've been really good about that.
Yeah. It's generally a good idea to kind of make decisions like that if you have like some sort of a plan.
Yeah.
Or just some sort of like a kind of desired outcome down the road. Yeah, definitely.
Last question, and I just want to thank you so much for all your time and patience, and thanks for talking about the career stuff, because sometimes people are awkward about talking about that, because it's almost like, well, I don't want to seem ambitious, but like, what do you want to do? Seem lazy? I mean, like, I don't get that. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's a misnomer in the music industry that there is something wrong with it. And it shouldn't be, as long as you're doing.
We are not. Nobody is. There's no. I mean, if this is what we do for a living, we have to figure out ways to make a living. And it's easy for because this is art, and it's art, and it's beautiful, and it's like, and it's expression, and it's all that stuff. So it's like you can kind of you can go a long way thinking that it's all about just like things just come from the moment, and they come from inspiration. But it's like, no, in order to make things happen, you have to try to make them happen. You have to, and I don't think there's anything wrong with anybody trying to do that.
Only if you want to stay around and have a career. Yeah, exactly. You better be doing that, because if you're not, you ain't gonna be working, especially nowadays, man. It's all self-driven.
Absolutely.
So thank you for talking about that.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional, and how much has just been a natural part of aging?
Wow. I think that I used to be somebody that yeah. So I used to be somebody that was like, I would kind of pride myself in being like an experience junkie, like somebody, it's like, if there's something like, like if we're out here in Australia on like having dinner, before, after a show near the Indian Ocean, I'm like leaving dinner before like dessert comes in, I'm going to just jump into the water, and I kind of like, I really embraced that mantle like to the hilt. and I really, there's a big part of me that still loves that, but I'm more cautious. I've gotten my ass handed to me in many different ways, like physically, also like, just in the sense of like, just kind of like respecting, like not necessarily knowing my limitations, but just respecting them, just being like, I am this age. There are things I want to do. There are things I can do. There are things I can't do. Let's just put everything in its place here, and try to, I mean, it's down to everything, down to like spontaneously with my kids, we were on the boardwalk, like they're just like hustling, like up to Santa Monica on on their Razor scooters. This is like maybe 3 years ago, like maniacs. And I'm in my jeans and I'm just sprinting, trying to catch up with them. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I was like, guys, let's go over here. And then we ran over to a skate shop, and I was like, that one, I want that one. And I grabbed a skateboard, I bought it, and just like
a skateboard, right on. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. And I just get on the skateboard and I'm just like taking off, like it hadn't been 30 years since I've really been on one. And I'm just like cruising, and we're like the three of us are like weaving in and out of people, and we're making our way up to, the pier. We make our way back, and then I become that asshole dad with the skateboard in the back. and and then shortly thereafter, I proceeded to fall so hard, like 3 or 4 times, like so unbelievably hard, that exact skateboard, I'm looking at it right now, and it's the monitor stand for one of the monitors that's here in the studio. It's
Oh,
like
you retired it.
Skateboard is just sitting right here. It's like that's another example of just like count your blessings, keep doing good shit, and just know you know your place. Like
well, this is going to happen one day, and it's just like the worst feeling in the world when you get in the car to go somewhere at night and you realize my vision just is not as good as it used to be. It's such a small, you feel so small in that. It's like, man, this is like, you just like, thank goodness for me. It's just like minor, and it's just like whatever, but it was like a devastating feeling. So just preparation. That's all.
All right. I'm going to do it. I'm going to prepare myself for that feeling. Here I go.
Listen, I want to thank you very much. Let me tell people where they could find you, what you have going on. First of all, Kaveh has 2 solo albums. I would love you to check them out. Let me spell his name. It's Kaveh, Kaveh, Rastegar, Rastegar. They are both available on Apple Music, I believe, and probably everywhere the streaming.
Yeah, all the streaming places.
Okay, he's got new music coming out with Sabrina Claudio and with a young artist called Gavin Haley. Do you want to talk about any of that?
Yeah, it's just more producing and writing with these people, and excited about both of their projects going to be coming out in early next year.
Awesome. Also, stuff with I tried it, Lucky Day and Cynthia Erivo.
Lucky Day, hopefully more stuff with Cynthia Erivo. We talked about just doing some more writing coming up, but there's also a trio record with Larry Gold.
Yes, had that coming up with that next. And when is that coming out?
We're just working out who's going to put it out, and I think we've got it figured out. So possibly in May, but just stay tuned for.
What kind of trio? Is it like jazz or more like Kneebody stuff, or?
No, it's just more. It's kind of like, it's more. It's just real. It feels really like in the pocket, kind of comfortable. Like it's Larry and Abe Rounds, who's just a great drummer. He plays with Meshell Ndegeocello, and he's just a fantastic young, great musician. The 3 of us, we got together during the pandemic, and we would just do these sessions at our friend Pete's studio, and we started writing music, and it just all feels really great. And some of it really reminds me of the Meters. Some of it reminds me of Headhunters, but it's all got its own like spin to it. It's got the Larry spin to it, like 1,000%, and it's just feels really good.
Very cool. And
the project is called Better, actually, because everything just made us feel better getting to get together and make music together. So, and
look on Kaveh's Instagram for that. Also, along those same lines, if you are interested in working with Kaveh, either with him as a producer or a co-writer with you, or if you're just interested in, if you have some questions for him, and if you want some guidance or consulting on some of the work he does or how he approaches some of his bass lines, or his thought process about that, reach out to him on Instagram. I would suggest that you please include some links on there if you're looking for production or stuff like that, so he can get back to, or for whatever it is, just send him some information so that he can come back with has some basis to figure out, are you guys a fit, because he's a pretty busy guy. So that's all I would ask. And again, it's on Instagram. Anything else? Could we sell something of yours?
No, it's okay. I just want to say thank you so much for creating this amazing platform for all of us musicians. I was listening to the episode that you had with Bob Klaub, who's one of my heroes, and has become a really, really close friend. I just love Bob so much, and I've just been loving listening to these episodes ever since, any chance I get, and I just really appreciate the chance to get to talk to you and
thanks, man.
Yeah. So this has been great.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. I appreciate it. And yeah, I've had a good time talking to you. Thank you. Well, one last question. What is that? Is that like an Escher? It's not Escher, but it looks like Escher. The
behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's so that's it's, it's the cover. It's a drawing. It's the drawing of the cover of Minor Threat's first album, which is Ian MacKaye, the singer of Minor Threat, is just kind of like bent over, like sitting on a stoop somewhere, and that's done with a ballpoint pen.
You did that?
No, I just started following this artist, this guy Paul Kobriger, who's also in the skateboarding world.
Wow.
And he painstakingly made this, and I saw he posted it and he had it up for sale on his site, and I was like, man, I gotta have this. It's
is so cool. That's amazing. That's awesome, man.
It's great. It's pretty big, and it is.
You look
at it really closely, and you can just see all of the lines that he made, and and everything that's there. So that's what that is.
That's a great drawing, man. Thank you for. I'm gonna follow him on Instagram. All righty, man. Well, thanks for everything, Kaveh. Guys, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, spread it around on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Kaveh Rastegar. Again, check him out on Instagram. Look at his 2 solo records and new music coming out. Trio with Larry Goldings, Sabrina Claudio, Gavin Haley, Lucky Day, and Cynthia Erivo. All that stuff, and hit him up if you're interested in doing some work with him or production. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar or your bass, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Kaveh, thanks for everything, brother.
Thank you so much.